Shedletsky, Shedletsky, Shedletsky. Knowing where everything is, knowing when everything is, and knowing what everything is. Seems he always knows more than he lets on, and never really elaborates, leaving us with bits and pieces to put together. I'm Rando Ranger, and today I'll be going over what we know about Shedletsky so far with Chapter 3 out. Since there isn't much information out on him yet, I'll likely be overanalyzing some dialogues with them, but hopefully they provide some insight. Without further ado, let's begin on our first piece of evidence to analyze. Immediately after we start the game, we wake up, ramble on about Bilderman's kidnapping and how he time traveled to our boy Terry, and not a single soul has any clue what we're talking about, except one person. This person is Shedletsky, who even goes so far as to send us a letter. Mind you though, we've likely just got to the hotel after time traveling, so he must have already known we'd be here, while everyone else doesn't even know where we're from or how we got here. Shedletsky being aware of us immediately as the story starts should hint at some ideas. The first idea is that he is related to us in some way, whether that be knowing what we did last time or just knowing our fate is intertwined with the swords and forcibly being involved as the creator. This is further backed as we are referred to as Shedletsky's chosen one. The other idea is that Shedletsky maybe has something planned for us, or a contingency plan against us, whatever that may be. This is an important detail to remember, and as later chapters come out, I'll revisit this and see what else we discover about Shedletsky and our origins, along with what his motives/plans are. The next thing I want to go over is regarding the Ice Dagger. After we defeat the Cruel King and travel back to Shedletsky to tell him about it, he actually says that he's been expecting us and that we have much to discuss. This is a little bit strange because it's like he knows we did something, despite never mentioning anything about where to start finding Bilderman. Our mission in the first place was to find Bilderman, not the swords after all. Upon going into the next room to discuss with Shedletsky, there's an ellipsis before he asks, "Did you find it?" Which could indicate that we actually did have some dialogue beforehand, but from what I can tell right now, it's not very likely. Assuming there wasn't anything said before that line, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say that Shedletsky knew it was our fate to find the swords. I think that he was probably just testing our fate a little bit to see just how far it could go by not telling us where the Ice Dagger was and seeing if we'd actually find it. I also think that when he's surprised by us finding the Ice Dagger, it's not because he thought we'd die, as suggested by him expecting us, but rather because fate silently guided us to where we needed to be, a feat that should be highly unlikely without any instructions from him. Even if there was something said before the ellipsis, this conversation still isn't free from suspicion because we must have said something to prompt him asking if we found it, but we have no idea what would have been said, so we'll have to wait for later chapters to confirm if anything happened there. Moving on, something is also a little bit suspicious about the first time we see Shedletsky. Why does he change from saying someone has kidnapped Bilderman to they have kidnapped Bilderman? It's almost as if he's trying to throw us off somehow by saying the twins took him, and later we find on they definitely didn't. They don't even know about him probably. Either way, Shedletsky's ambiguity here is a little bit strange, intentional or not, and accounting for how he got whipped by the twins of all people, something is just a little fishy, but who knows, maybe he is weak. It's also hard to make any solid conclusions on what Shedletsky's up to without first knowing exactly how much he knows. But something we do see is that he's proven time and time again that he knows more than he lets on, which naturally should make him suspicious. Going back to the twins, Shedletsky could be setting us up, especially with his first introduction. Considering how much he hasn't told us, it wouldn't be super unreasonable to assume that the one who's supposed to guard all of this sword fight on the Height swords isn't just some pushover that got whipped by the twins accidentally, and he probably knows way more about the swords than anyone. I have a feeling that getting beaten by the twins and immediately being ambiguous about the kidnapper is a part of his plan for us as his chosen one, and we'll have to wait for later chapters to see what he's really up to. Adding on to Shedletsky being ambiguous, it's a little strange how we've never run into the kidnapper once, even after collecting 3 swords, nearing half of the 7. Though it is entirely possible that the voices are the kidnapper, and they're just using vessels to get the swords. At first in chapter 1, you'd think the kidnapper was the twins with the dialogue and the context, but when you beat them, you realize it isn't them. Next, you hear about the Ice Dagger being stolen from Kev, and you think, oh yeah, surely this must be the kidnapper, because he does meet their criteria after all. He's stealing swords, making Rotarnal icy, and he probably took Bilderman too. But then you hear the Cruel King sigh, and you realize that he only stole to protect his kingdom, and protecting it from you, of all people. He doesn't know who Bilderman is. Even though he isn't the kidnapper, he sounds crazy. I mean, why would we want to cause the fall of Blackrock Kingdom? We have no motives anyways. But in chapter 3, we get some idea that maybe he was right about the prophecy and we're fulfilling it, since his wandering knights tell us about how Blackrock will crumble without their king. So in an ironic way, the prophecy was true about the fall of Blackrock Kingdom. We did cause it, even if indirectly. At this point in the story, it's safe to say that the voices have some level of truth to them, despite our limited knowledge of their motives, besides wanting to stop us from getting the swords. Griefer's lines, unlike the Cruel Kings, don't reveal much about what the voices are or any prophecies, but the voices do tell him his father is one of two who can pull the Venom chain, which is true. Of course, with the information that the voices speak at least mostly the truth, it wouldn't be far-fetched to say that there's a good chance we are the evil ones, or at least we were, though this doesn't really explain much about the kidnapper. It only explains a little bit more about who we are. Oddly enough though, the kidnapper seems secondary to what everything is really about, with us being the main focus. The voices also don't mention anything about Builderman, so it don't make much sense that they kidnapped him, but the voices also seem to be our main antagonist from the player's point of view, despite our goal to stop the kidnapper, even though the kidnapper hasn't actually caused us any direct trouble whatsoever, and to our knowledge hasn't even found a single sword. Tying this back to Shedletsky though, if anyone should know the full prophecy, it's him. He's shown that he knows more than anyone about the swords, and he's the guardian of them after all. Despite him not revealing that he knows about the prophecy, there's a lot of evidence pointing towards it that I mentioned earlier. When we take this into consideration, it really raises the question of why is he helping us, and to that, I don't know. But as soon as more chapters drop, I'll be making more videos explaining the lore of Blocktail, so stay tuned if you want to hear more theories and ideas. Rando Ranger out.